Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Dietrich, Associate Director of Membership, and I would like to welcome you. Making of a Longwood Christmas 2022. This event will be recorded and the video will be shared and emailed to all attendees. It is my great pleasure to introduce our presenter, Jim Sutton, Associate Director of Display Design. Since 2007, Jim has been the aesthetic gatekeeper for Longwood, responsible for conceiving, designing, implementing Longwood's renowned conservatory displays that elevate the art of horticulture. Jim will take you behind the scenes to reveal how Longwood creates its world-renowned Christmas displays. Get a glimpse into the inspiration, the planning, creation, and execution in this jaw-dropping seasonal show that is the favorite of young and the young at heart. At the end of the presentation, Jim can answer your questions about a Longwood Christmas. Please submit them through the questions section. Jim, thank you for being with us today to share your love of a Longwood Christmas.
Thank you, Melissa. So the display is on now through January 8th, and the theme this year is botanical splendor. So how do we come up with botanical splendor? Usually it starts with a storyboard. So I do this for myself and for the staff and really think of all the ideas we've done. They can be things we've done in the past or just ideas we have just to get everybody thinking about what's possible to make our displays come to life. And it's always Christmas. We start a year ahead of time planning the displays. There's 23 different project leaders and I'm really just the head elf. So I try to help them all with inspiration, with questions, logistics, budgeting, to make it all come to life. And let's not forget the countless volunteers that dedicate their time to help make this happen as well. So it all starts off at the visitor center. This is where we first want you to see the theme. So this year there are 2 flock trees out there that are decorated with dried elements and some ornaments from our collection. So this year we really focused on using horticulture elements and botanical specimens throughout the display. And that's really evident when you walk through the visitor center tunnels. So the project leaders here had this idea to create 3 different moments with these beautiful wreaths. One inspired by mosses and lichens, another one more with dried flowers and tillandsias, and another one featuring garden botanicals. So they're really beautiful. You can see it in the beginning there. We hold a frame up there to see the scale, make sure it works. And then the project leaders on rainy days, for the most part, start creating these beautiful elements to go in there to welcome guests as they come through the visitor center. Most guests will enter through the East Conservatory. So there's always 4 large trees out there to greet you when you first enter the conservatory for the indoor experience. We did something a little different in the entry pavilion this year. We have these large hanging orbs over your head that are featured with hanging amaranth, dried botanicals, and then we made 1 large tree of sempervivens. You may know these as hens and chicks. It's a hardy plant. We usually don't use a lot of hardy things indoors, but we're actually going to put this cone outside after the season and see how well it holds up. When you first go into the East Conservatory, there's a beautiful moment where you'll see 2 trees flanking the oval basin and 2 orchid arrangements in the oval basin. And we really wanted this to set the tone and also frame the view. The colors in the east are all very soft blues and pinks. The north door is a Photoshop favorite. That's if you're going to the right over to the green wall area. This was done in 2 trees and a wreath in the middle featuring purple orchids and this really cute little terrarium idea that they have with lights inside of it. So I'm always amazed by the creativity of the team. I get to see all of their projects in process and then see the final results. And here's one of the final results. This is one of the biggest trees under glass. This is the tree in the East Conservatory. And we put it like we have in several years, where it actually is in the middle of the patio of oranges. And we did this to help with traffic flow. And it also gives you 2 photo op opportunities where someone's not in the back of your picture. So this one you can see features a lot of blue and silver and white. There's a lot of hydrangeas on there. And then of course it's surrounded by packages and plant material. The ballroom is always a very special moment. So we have the Longwood tree in the upper corner by the organ, again, featuring dried material and a gold and white and cream color palette. The other special thing about the ballroom is the children's trees. So this is our second year of doing the children's trees in there. And if you've been to Longwood for years, you remember the children's trees used to be much smaller when they were in a different house. But now we've made them 12-foot tall. So that requires each of the schools to make about 300 ornaments, which is taxing for them. So the schools apply, and then we also give them the theme well in advance so they can make their ornaments and they can speak to the theme. So it's always a big pleasure for the crowds to come in, see the children's trees and all the things they've created with the theme in mind. The organ's also in this room, and it will play periodically throughout the display. The exhibition hall, this is the area that surrounds the fern floor. We did something a little different there this year in that we did 2 living trees. So a living tree for us is a metal frame that has potted plant material on top of it. So this one features syngoniums and tillandsias and aglaonemas and things like that, all tropical plant material. And we have 2 of them, one in front of the door behind Roger's tree, the east, and then one in front of the water lily door. So you'll see 2 of these on either side. This is something else we did. We decided to take a chance and block the center walk. So this is the center of the conservatory, dead center in the middle, and we put a large 18-foot revolving tree in there. So that's the biggest tree that the revolving stand can handle, and it's got our beautiful walnut box around it. And then you can see how the center walk just sort of wraps around it with that sea of pink poinsettias. So there it is on the right. That's what it looked like when I thought this idea up a year ahead of time. I presented it to all the internal stakeholders, and everybody thought it was a good idea to take this chance and see how a tree would perform in the center walk. So the tree is a mixture of red and pink color palette, and it has 300 preserved roses on it, 150 red and 150 pink. So I think it's really pretty day and night. And at nighttime when it revolves, you can see the lights reflecting in the glass. Another place that people are always interested in seeing is the fern floor. So what we did for the fern floor this year there are 6 trees down there, and there is this sort of metal aperture that wraps them around them. It's all wind inspired, but we wanted to be covered with horticulture. So here you can see it in the process of being finished. 6 trees down the sides, 1 big stage tree in the middle, and then 2 fountain jets in the middle. And here's a glimpse of it at night. So it really is quite spectacular as the plants sort of come up and wrap around the trees. We intentionally did not decorate the trees because they are 6 perfect trees, and we didn't want the ornamentation on the trees to complete with all of the swirling mass of horticulture around it. Another crowd favorite is always the music room. So this year for the music room, we did an upscale florist. So when you go in there, take a deep breath. It smells just like a flower shop. There's lots of fresh flowers in there. There's potted material in there. There's faux and dried. And it actually looks like a flower shop in process, getting ready for a busy holiday season. So lots of great detail in this room. Just a really nice full feeling to the room of a florist shop. One of the things that brought this room to life was this relationship we were able to have with Drexel University. So the West Paul School of Fashion and Design at Drexel University helped us create these 2 floral gowns. So this project started in August of this past year. We went and met with the students. We had them come to Longwood, see the music room, talk about the project. Then they brought back 4 illustrations, 2 of which you can see there. Those are the 2 that we selected to move forward and make gowns out of. So the gown on the right is fully constructed of preserved, dried, and faux material. So a little over 200 dried roses on there, lots of dried fern pieces. So just a stunning vision in red. And she's in the alcove when you first walk into the right. You can't miss her. And the other one is in a shop window in the front of it. So that's a little surprise you have to come and see in person. In the PBX in this area, we wanted to make a tree that spoke to our local heritage of growing mushrooms. So on this tree, we have over 200 glass mushrooms. Also in this space, we featured our CE students' illustrations from their botanical drawing classes. So they're hanging on the walls, some really nice artwork from our students. And also, what I forgot to mention, in the music room, we're featuring a fresh floral design every week from one of our CE instructors. So lots of connection to the Longwood Continuing Education Program as well as Drexel. The Acacia Passage, always a photo favorite. Down there we have these sort of willow-inspired white trees, and above your head are these large orbs that are made out of grapevines, and through the grapevines we weaved live Phalaenopsis orchids and tillandsias and Spanish moss. So, in that long linear space, we like to take one element and repeat it. It works really well from an aesthetic standpoint, and I think this year is no exception. This just made a beautiful way into our new orchid house. And speaking of which, here is our reimagined orchid house. Many of you know this is the first part we opened up of Longwood Reimagined. And here you can see some of the orchid volunteers and staff creating these big orbs that hang over your head. There are 7 orbs of orchids that are above your head in this house. And then, of course, all the beautiful orchids from the collection. And this time of year is a great time of year to see the orchids. They're really blooming quite nicely. But that gives you a little idea of how we make these big baskets that hang above your head. They're made out of stainless steel. We fill the center with styrofoam peanuts in plastic bags to try to keep the weight down. And then the orchids are unpotted, fed through the sides, and then pinned in place with a lot of sphagnum moss. So that way the orchids are able to thrive and continue to flower, and we're able to lift these baskets up in the air. This year, we have a record number of hanging elements above your head. There's over 50 things that are hanging up for the holiday season throughout the conservatory complex that are special just for Christmas. Another room that has some special things in it is the silver garden. So these ornaments that you see were hand created by a person in our shop who's very talented, and she wanted to get involved in Christmas. So I found out that our orchid grower had a whole team of volunteers that were pressing and drying orchids. So I gave them to her and I said, can you turn these into Christmas ornaments? And so she encased them in resin and made these beautiful ornaments that are featured in the tree in the silver garden. The Pierce DuPont house is not to be missed either. It's a beautiful display this year. Every room is decorated, and there's also a beautiful tree in the center featuring the harvest of the season, so fruit inspired. Now, of course, in my mind, half of the display is outside, and Longwood loves acronyms. So OCLC stands for the Outdoor Christmas Lighting Committee. And we'll meet during this year's display. We'll critique all the lights, and then we will meet every other week planning for next year, because the lights have to be ordered very early in the season, and we want the outdoor experience to be as rich and full as the indoor experience. So like everything at Longwood, it starts with a plan. So here's a plan of the outside gardens and what we have planned for this year for the lighting committee to do. And it all happened. I'm happy to say it all happened. It's really beautiful. So one of the things you'll first notice is the Oak LA. It's got all these different colored lights. We work very closely with the lighting company, and they give us first crack at new blends of lights and new colors. So we often like to try one or two with the new colors. This year, with the theme of botanical splendor, we did not set a color palette, and that enabled us to use all the colors possible in the display. One of the things I think was really cool, this is our first time doing this. We worked with our marketing department, our graphic design department, and created this metal structure that goes over our wishing well. And it is laser cut steel that has a light inside of it. And it casts this pattern over the entire rose arbor. So really fun, interactive, something brand new to us, and something that I can see more of in the future. A crowd favorite from last year. A lot of times if we have something we really like, we will repeat it for at least a year or two. So this was at the small lake with the bulbs that sort of looked like they were flickering flames. So we liked that reflection they gave us in the lake, and we repeated that display this year. In the large lake, we created this giant leaf. So this leaf is 90 feet wide and 140 feet long. And again, it kind of spoke to the theme. So they're done with illuminated luminaries. In the Italian water garden, we did this display of this grid pattern that changes and moves through the space in there. In the meadow, we actually took the grasses that we tried somewhere else last year and thought they'd be more effective in the meadow spaces. So they're kind of both sides of it as you walk down the meadow. And the tunnel. The tunnel was a very popular thing for the last couple of years. Everybody loved it. We built it one year, then we expanded it, and then it's reached its max of 200 feet long. So the tunnel is back with some programming. And then because that tunnel was so good, we want to add another one. So here you can see it in the whole process. We did a different shape, sort of this Gothic shape. We wanted a nice long tunnel, and we wanted this one in a different location. So this one actually takes you into the main fountain garden, and it has completely different programming on it. It's wonderful because you can see it from the conservatories. You can see it as you're coming up the cow lot to the conservatories, and it looks really good if you're walking down the tunnel or coming back into it. But it was a way to get guests to go into the main fountain garden because we planned a lot of new stuff for you down in that space. So some of the things we have down there, we have these enormous cones. So there's three in the back there are really so big that our metal shop had to build them outside. And the center one is reminiscent of the one we used to have at the Terrace Restaurant, where you can walk in the cone and see up through it. So a lot of space to invite you to walk and meander through the main fountain garden. The orbs are back on the landform. So another crowd favorite. They will be in different colors. So take a few moments to watch them. Something else we did was down by the Chimes Tower. We put our biggest tree outside back in the basin there. So this is at the base of the Chimes Tower. The water is drained out, and then we crane the tree in, and then we fill the basin back up. So it's a lovely tree both day and night. Of course, there are fire pits, 3 of them throughout the gardens, open every day, 12 to 11 p.m., weather permitting, the Italian Water Garden, the Pierce DuPont House, and the Pump House Plaza. Another favorite was the gardener's tree. So it's back in its original location. We moved it just for last year so we could put a fire pit there, but it is back at the end of Polonia, LA, and it features a lot of handmade ornaments. So the project leader there took one of the largest leaves, a Magnolia macrophylla, and encased it in resin and made big ornaments for the tree. So another big, nice tree outside. The wildlife tree for our furry and feathered friends. So this year, the project leader decided to do it with gourds. So these gourds have all been drilled in different patterns and illuminated from inside. So they cast a shadow and light out. And then, of course, it has pine cones rolled in suet and lots of things for our feathered friends. All the tree houses are open and decorated. So you really should take the time to see them. They're really always quite nice, and a lot of detail and effort goes into them. My favorite is always the dragons that are outside the Canopy Cathedral, because we have a volunteer who makes them a new outfit every year. So this year they have these really fun little capes on them with embroidery of snowdrops all over it. And that room features a kokedama, which is a Japanese style of unpotting plants and covering them with moss and then suspending them in the air. So really fun and creative in the tree houses. The birdhouse features all of these handmade mushrooms and sort of a woodland feel. And then, of course, the tree house features a big tree that has these big flowers that were made out of corn husk that they dyed in this sort of burgundy color. So very full, rich display in there, but all 3 of the tree houses are definitely worth going around and seeing. And then, of course, the theater. The open air theater fountains are running at 10:15. They start every morning and every 15 minutes. So a beautiful fountain show, and they change. So if you have the time, we're stopping and seeing that. The train display, of course, is up and running. It's been running since the fall. And a new little feature there was the Italian Water Garden. So it's fun to watch the kids and the parents watching the children enjoy the trains. So this year, some people always like to know the stats. There were 20,000 ornaments used in this year's display. So that comes from our collection of over 600 different types. And I think we have about 66,000 ornaments. So they're all cataloged in a book, and we actually store them in a place called the Calf Barn. So every year we add to the collection, and then we may have to take some away if they've gotten old or damaged, but we continue to grow this collection of ornaments. And then, of course, crops. Everybody wants to know how many crops we used. So 13,650 crops, and out of that, 2,500 were poinsettias. So a lot of our poinsettias are grown here because we have this particular variety that gives a nice big bracts. It's called Santa Claus, and we do that in white, pink, and red. And then we did 50 decorated trees, and the largest one being 27 foot tall. But it took more than 200 dedicated staff to create this. So Christmas is all hands on. We like to get everybody involved in it. The ideas come from all over, and everybody works on it to make it happen. So, please come and visit.
Thank you, Jim. We would like to welcome you during this holiday season. Jim, if you wouldn't mind to advance, please. Member reservations are required daily from open to close during the Longwood Christmas, except for our garden premium members and innovators. We suggest to visit early into the season as sellouts are likely, especially weekends and the week between Christmas and New Year's Day. Jim again. Member reservations can be made online at longwoodgardens.org. You will see here on our homepage, Gardens admission availability. This provides an at-a-glance our admission availability for several weeks by actually scrolling to the right-hand side. So you can see every half-hour time frame and the availability. And the key to our Gardens admission availability calendar is directly under the heading. Anything shown in blue is available and is an active link to make your member reservations. Anything in red is limited, but still a link. And then anything with a strike through is sold out. If our website is showing we are sold out through all of our channels. Reservations can be made every half hour from 10 a.m. till 9:30 p.m. Please note you may enter up to 30 minutes before and after your scheduled time. However, you cannot enter before we open at 10 a.m. You will also notice at the bottom of each date is a quick reference when complimentary guest tickets are accepted and when they are not. Jim, if you won't mind. Thank you. If you're interested in bringing friends and you guest tickets this Christmas season, please be aware these tickets are not accepted and blackout dates during the Longwood Christmas applies. Blackout dates are all Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays during the Longwood Christmas through January 1st, as well as every day from December 23rd through January 1st. Your complimentary guest tickets can be accepted and accessed via your online account. Jim? Now is the fun time for Q&A. So please submit your questions and we will go through them for Jim. Okay, a few questions. So this year's theme is Splendid Botanicals. Could you talk a little bit about that theme and just the process of how you come up with each year's theme?
Sure. What we do is we get the whole team together. We have a brainstorming session, and I have the themes from the last 30 years. So we talk about themes we've done in the past. No bad ideas initially. So we put them all out there. Some people bring pictures. Some people bring ideas they've worked on throughout the year, some they saw somewhere else. If you really want to know, there are really very few new ideas. So most ideas, the kernel of it came from somewhere else. You've either seen it somewhere else or you saw a picture of it or somebody else referred you to it. So, and we're not opposed to that. I mean, I literally say, there are no new ideas. And when people ask me where I get my ideas, I say I steal them like everybody else does. So it's so hard right now with the internet and all of the pictures out there. We're flooded with those things. And, we've evolved so much. So the chance of coming up with something entirely new is very slim. But here at Longwood, we can always put the Longwood spin on it. So we can make it bigger, we can make it different, we can make it horticultural, which is sort of how the theme for this year happened. Because botanical splendor to us meant, okay, we do this every day, but how can we elevate it and make it a whole season just for Christmas? So it was something the staff and most of these project leaders are active gardeners here in the gardens. So they were very comfortable with the theme and their minds started racing immediately thinking, okay, what can I do on a tree? What can I grow and harvest? What can I make out of plant material that'll fit this theme? So that's sort of how this theme came about. And then we'll actually be meeting in 2 weeks to come up with a theme for next year. So we work one full year ahead of time.
Thank you. Could you share a little bit of a difference between dried and preserved plant materials? Because you referenced it a bit through the presentation.
Sure, they do get confusing. So when someone refers to something as dried, that just means the plant was harvested, generally hung upside down, and just let to dry naturally. Those will last for a couple months. They usually get brittle and they break and fall apart. If something is preserved, it's been dried and then it's been put in glycerin, and usually those are color fast. So those you're having to buy from a supplier, but they will hold their color and they will last a lot longer. So for example, the roses on the center walk tree, those are preserved. So they will be pink and red for years to come. But they had to cut the stem off the head of the rose to preserve it. And the petals are really soft and pliable. That's the glycerin. So that's the difference between dried and preserved. Preserved is going to last longer, going to be color fast, but you're going to have to buy it from a commercial source. Dried is probably something you could do at home with certain material.
Wonderful. Could you share where the PBX is?
Sure. That area, we call it the PBX because that's long ago when Longwood had a central phone line. That's where the phone got answered. So the PBX is the area right outside of the music room. So you often go right from the music room into it and don't really realize it. There's 2 restrooms there, and it's a little corridor. It also has a beautiful staircase that guests always think goes up to a mansion. It doesn't. It goes up to our performing arts studios and their offices up there. But that's what we refer to as the PBX area, is the little vestibule right outside of the music room.
Wonderful. Could you share a little bit about our biggest trees? Where do we get them from? Are they hard to procure? Do we grow them? And what is the largest tree again we have during a Longwood Christmas?
Yeah, the largest tree is 27 feet tall. It's out in the basin at the Chimes Tower. The largest one indoors is the East Conservatory tree. And telling you where I get them is the only piece of information we won't share. And the reason we won't share it is because we're in competition for those trees. So we have a really good relationship with 3 or 4 growers in the Pennsylvania area that will actually let us tag trees even years ahead of time. So we built this relationship over time, and there's a lot of competition for these big trees. And you know, Longwood, we're quite exacting about the trees, right down to the variety of the tree we want. So it is the only piece of information that no one will share with you, and only a few of us know where they come from. So I will tell you that they come locally, and that they're only cut down a day before they come to Longwood to be lit and used in the holiday display.
Wonderful. Could you share where the wildlife tree is located?
Sure. The wildlife tree is when you come in, if you go immediately to the right, you'll first see that beautiful steel structure that was laser cut that cast a pattern. You go straight down that path, down what we call Flower Garden Drive, and the tree will be down there on your left-hand side. So it's got several gourds in the tree, and then there's 2 really large gourds at the base of it, but you'll see all of the hand-drilled holes in it and the light emanating from inside of them. Can't miss it on your way down to the lake area, which eventually would take you to the Italian Water Garden.
Wonderful. Daniel mentions that he loved seeing the hanging white mum globes in the West Conservatory, and he wasn't sure, were they still in some of these shots and these images that we shared? Are you repurposing them for Christmas?
Well, it's interesting you saw those and picked those up. For Mum Festival, I always design white mums over the lawn. And that is because the time schedule is so tight to get the whole conservatories changed over that the one thing we can put off a week is to put the baskets over the lawn. So for that reason, we use white chrysanthemums at Mum Festival, because the cultivar we use will hold for another 2 weeks, and then we can change it over to poinsettias. So if you come back in another week, there'll be 18 mixed red and white hanging poinsettia baskets over the lawn, and the mums will be gone. But we do mums intentionally because they give us a little bit of extra time just to get things changed over.
Wonderful. We also have a question about how much of Longwood is using solar for their lights.
That's a good question. We do have a 4-acre solar field, and it does generate 4 megawatts of power. So with us using LED lights, it could probably power all of the Christmas lights. They're LED. We also use low voltage ones. And because we're using LED, we get 5 years out of our lights. So I'm sure a lot of that power is coming from the solar field. I'm not sure exactly how much, But it used to be when we lit trees, we would trip circuits and things like that. We don't do that anymore, not with the new low voltage and the LED lights.
Is the gardens closed any days during the Longwood Christmas?
No, we are open every day. So you're free to come and enjoy it. We are open every day of this holiday season.
We have another question about the children's outdoor garden and indoor garden.
Okay, the children's outdoor garden, the fountain is closed down, and there's not a whole lot happening in that area. But the children's indoor garden is totally up and running. So the fountains in there are all lit. There's a bright, colorful tree in there, and the indoor garden is inviting and welcoming to all the kids. They can see the ornaments the other children made on the trees, and then they go over and enjoy running through the maze and having a good time in the indoor children's garden.
I think a few of these sculptures have Santa hats on and scarves and
yeah, they usually decorate them up for the season.
Wonderful. We have a question about lots of people are already planning. One question about your favorite Longwood concept that you could potentially do from years past. What would it be if you can do it over again?
Well, there was one that we did a couple years ago, which was Trees Reimagined. And that was a sort of a spin-off on one we did prior of just celebrating trees. So I think that one has some traction, and I could see some version of that one coming back in the future because the tree is so iconic to Christmas, and there's so much we can do with them. So that's a theme that I think is not played out entirely, and there's more I think we could do with that one, but not in the near future. So I'm going to let that one wait for a couple of years.
About the number of lights that we use outside.
It's over 500,000, and it'd be 50 miles if you connect them strand to strand. So as I mentioned, they're all 100% LED. We actually put the date on the plugs when you get them in, so we know exactly when those lights have arrived, and we can use them for 5 years until they start to fail.
Barbara had a question about ornaments for sale at the gift shop. By any chance, are those pressed ones?
The orchid ones, there's a very limited number of them. They're handmade. They only made 125 of them. They will all be for sale in the shop at the conclusion of the Christmas display, but I imagine they'll go pretty fast. And in general, we do try to tell the shop what we're buying in so that they can buy in ornaments as well. But the problem is, the supply chain has been a little questionable lately. And sometimes we need 100 ornaments and there's not too many left to be bought. So we do try to coordinate as much as possible, but it is also difficult. And we're also using Christmas ornaments from our collection that we may have had for 20 years, 30 years, even some of them. So, with our massive collection of ornaments, the ones we're using aren't always commercially available. So the shop does try to carry things. They certainly know the theme and they try to carry appropriate material to it, but we can't always have the same ornaments.
We do have a question about bringing, using your membership and the number of guests that you can bring. So absolutely, we want you to come and enjoy a Longwood Christmas. Gardens 1 through Gardens Preferred. Please make your time to member reservations in advance. And of course, you can make your reservation for the total number of admissions that is included with your specific membership, as well as Garden Premium members. You do not need reservations and you can bring in your total amount of admissions as well. Do you offer tips or info for guests and members to kind of copy your Christmas decorations? Any how-tos?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think if you look at enough Longwood trees, you'll kind of see the way we do the trees, putting the largest ornaments on the inside and then working our way out. We also do what we call the squint test when we put our lights on trees, where you squint your eyes and you look at the tree to see if there's any dark spots on it. Lighting a Longwood tree is definitely a challenge. They're lit by a very select group of people that actually have a training video that they have to watch first about how to light a Longwood Christmas tree. So it has to be safe from an electrical standpoint, but it also has to be aesthetically accurate. So lighting the tree is the first step. we're very, very critical about that, but that has to be done well. And then when it comes to decorating the tree, we're very exacting about how the tree gets decorated. We also like to put the ornament right up against the branch and then take the hook or the wire and wrap it around the branch. We don't like to see the ornament just sort of dangling free from the hook. So that's one thing we do. Everybody does that at Longwood for their ornaments on the trees.
And there's one thing that I think I've seen throughout the years, that you place your larger ornaments in the back or closest to the trunk of the tree, and then you keep building on to your very tip of your branch is some delicate, smaller ornament. So there's usually lots of ornaments on one branch.
If you can get a hold of them, we have something we call tippers. And those are either really thin little icicles or some very small ornamentation. And Melissa, you're exactly correct. We go biggest inside and then work our way out. We also start even before that, we make a sample basket of all the ornaments. So there's a picking order of who gets to pick their ornaments when, and then they put together a basket that I approve. And then that shows their whole color scheme. And they also have the numbers of ornaments they're going to need. So, they know, depending on the size of their tree, how many ornaments they need. So the least they would need would probably be like maybe 300 to 400 for a smaller tree. Maybe that's an 8 to 12 foot tree. And the numbers go up from there. So we want to make sure that that tree is heavily decorated, but not so heavy that it falls over.
Question. So someone is asking about dining options. Absolutely. Our beer garden is open and we have always add additional tents in that area. So people are nice and warm and cozy. So for additional seating and space. Sue wanted to know, could anyone provide a suggestion for a Longwood Christmas?
I do occasionally get emails from people I do not know that send me suggestions for them. So sure, you never know where a good idea is going to come from. So we're not exclusive that it has to come from somebody inside or on Longwood staff. So, we're constantly open to new ideas. So I would have no problem with the idea coming from somebody else.
Liz remembers the incredible book collection from the artists in the music room a number of years ago that had images cut into it or folded into it. Any idea if we will ever bring them back?
Well, actually, it's interesting you mentioned those. Those made such an impression that we actually saved them over. So we bought them from her and we put them in our archives for conservation and storage. So yes, they will come back in different forms. They're part of our props now that we can use. And that was just one of those years that we found the right artist that just really helped us with our display. So for example, this year, we won't keep the dresses. They're going to go back to Drexel so they can display them at their university, which I think is real important. But yeah, when we find an artist like the paper one, Danielle was great to work with, loved her stuff, and really just a great person. So we really loved that we got to keep them, and we will use them again at some point in time. Probably not all of them at one time, but you will see them come back out.
Wonderful. I have another question from Emily. Did we incorporate plants for this botanical splendor theme?
I'm sorry, did we incorporate
native plants? Did we incorporate native plants?
Actually, yes. There were some times that people went and actually harvested some native plants for them. That really wasn't what they were given that, but if they could, they certainly could. So the grasses that were used for the fern floor, those were all harvested from our south parking lot. So yeah, we did use some native plant material.
Wonderful. I have a question from Luis. Is it possible to get a ticket for 10 a.m. and then another ticket for same day? So we do have you're able to enter 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after your timed member reservation. Of course, you're able to stay in the gardens for as long as you like. There is a no return policy. So either you would need a separate reservation or a separate timed admission ticket if you wanted to break up your visit because you're with family or friends or something like that in the middle of a day. But Rich, how long does it take to wrap lights for a Christmas tree and unwrap Christmas lights as well? I'm sure.
Well, that of course depends on how good you are. So I will say the big ones, like like a 20-foot tree. I watched them. I could see them from my office while they were wrapping the lights on that, and it usually takes about a day, day and a half. So you're talking about an 8 to 10 hour project. Now outdoors, the arborists put the lights on, and they're very skilled, and they start in August putting them on, and they do so many a day. So some they wrap, some they make a cone inside of. So I know it takes them months to put on all those lights, but it is quicker to take them off. So the lights come off quicker. And then again, we have a really good volunteer group that wrap all those lights and put them in crates according to color and year. So that way it makes it really easy. We don't have that big ball of lights next year when we're trying to get the lights out again. They're all very neatly wrapped. So I've taken that home and I've wrapped my lights the way Longwood does now.
Wonderful. Claire asked about volunteers. So we do look for volunteers throughout the year at different parts of the garden. Please go on our website for additional information, and you can find that there. Okay, May had a question about transitioning from fall to Christmas. How many days do you need to make that transition happen? She's amazed. In one day, and then just a few days later, it's completely different.
Yeah, you'd be amazed. It's not a matter of days, it's a matter of hours. So what happens is Mum Festival runs up till Sunday, and then it's Sunday night at 6 o'clock when we close. About 90 people came in, and we ripped out all of Mum Festival. So it has to come out that night. So come Monday, we can start putting Christmas in. So Mum Festival comes out very, very quickly. We don't even take the mums off the frames. We just take them outside. We pull all the beds, and then we start bringing in all the woodies and start decorating and planting the next day. So we have 4 full days to get it in.
Wow. Kate had a question about this webinar. So we are recording this webinar. It will be shared with all attendees and as well as the registrants who weren't able to join us this afternoon, but we will also include it in a member email. So members who just didn't have a moment to join us, they will be able to watch it at their leisure, probably in about the next week or so. So yes. How many people does it take to pull the installation off? And are they all in-house?
Well, it's over 200 if you total up everyone. And yes, they're all affiliated with Longwood in some form. They're either a volunteer, a student, or a staff member. And it's all the departments of Longwood. It's not just the horticulture department. It's our wonderful facilities department. It's marketing, it's education, it's guest services. It requires everyone to get involved to make Christmas a success.
Wonderful. We got a question from Linda. You shared a lot about what we do with the lights and of course the ornaments and storing after a Longwood Christmas, but what do you do with all the living plant material after the display is done?
Well, some of it, like the poinsettias, have run their course and they go to the compost. Some of the tropical and foliage plant material, we will repurpose them and use them in displays in January and February. So what we can repurpose, we do, but what we can't goes in our compost stream, and we have a very active composting program, and then we do use that in the garden. So that's what happens with the plants when they go off display. Either they get repurposed or they get composted.
Wonderful. Rose had a question about some of the areas that we talked about today. And so we do have a map. So there is a printed map at the visitor center that you can pick up. But of course, you can always use your, if you have a smartphone, you can pull up our digital map. There is no app to download. You'll just pull up longwoodgardens.org. You'll see our map feature at the top right-hand corner of our website. Touch that, and then it actually has a Google Maps feature. So it will tell you exactly where you are in the gardens and provide additional details through all of the main stops. But I definitely suggest that either paper or through your smartphone. And by any chance, would you know the number of varieties of Christmas trees that are used throughout the display?
Sure, we usually use about 3. So Fraser fir is the number one that we use a lot of. We also use a concolor fir, which gives us the Fraser fir gives us really strong branching. The concolor gives us that bluish cast. And then once in a while, we will try grand fir. So those are generally the top 3 that we use. So you may find if you see another one, it's probably one that we're trialing. We don't use blue spruce because the staff would hate me because they're so picky. And we don't use white pine just because they're not strong enough for all the ornamentation we want to put on them. So, and we don't usually use a lot of Douglas fir because we find that color of Douglas fir is too much yellow in the green. So the ones we picked because we like their needle retention and we like their color.
Wonderful. We had a question about the flower garden walk. Is it decorated outside?
It has some plant material on it, but what it has in it, it has all the bulbs for spring. So they have to remove the plants in the fall in order to make the spring display happen. So if you go there, you'll see a lot of what look like empty beds, but I assure you they are not empty. They have thousands, literally thousands of bulbs under the ground waiting to come up in the spring. And that's also true of our visitor center. When you see those beds covered over with the pine boughs, that is to hopefully minimize the amount of people walking over top of those beds because those bulbs underneath are very fragile, but they're all planted up for the spring.
We have a fun question here. Any stories about wildlife living in any one of your trees? Essence, the Rockefeller Center owl, or the squirrel?
To my knowledge, we've not brought a living animal inside with the trees. The one I do enjoy, though, is actually seeing the wildlife tree. If you go by early in the morning, sometimes the tree actually vibrates and it's moving for the amount of squirrel activity inside of it. So that's been the one that's amused me the most is, and we invite them in. I mean, it's there for them to enjoy, and sometimes they're really enjoying it.
Wonderful. We had a question about a member using complimentary guest tickets and when they can be used. So blackout dates are all Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays throughout the entire time of a Longwood Christmas through January 1st, as well as every day from December 23rd to January 1st. On that homepage where I showed you the garden's admission availability, where you look at the making member reservations, each day has a note if member complimentary guest tickets are accepted or they're not accepted. So that homepage really is a easy glance reference point for all of that information. Where do you store all of these ornaments once they're packed up?
We actually have a building we call the calf barn, and we have a really great system of all the ornaments go back in banker boxes. Every banker box has a number on it and has a picture of the ornament on the front of it. And then we have a book that corresponds to that. So we have the red section and the blue section, the silver section, the gold section, and they all have a different number on them. And that way we know exactly what ornaments we have and how many we have of them. And then this calf barn, the entire top floor is nothing but shelving units with rows of boxes. And all the boxes are all filled with all the ornamentation. And then on the first floor, we keep all of the other Christmas things like frames and wreath bases and all the sort of stuff that we don't inventory as much. But ornaments, we keep a tight inventory on them.
We have a question. Does all the decorating happen at night?
No. During Christmas changeover, there are people decorating trees, and right next to them, they are planting the beds. So while we want the trees to look good both day and night, most of the decorating probably happens during the day when we have the biggest staff here. But we work as much as we need to for those 4 days to get it all done. The only part that's done ahead of time, the music room itself does get finished up a week prior to actual Christmas installation. And that's because that room is so detailed, it requires extra time. And we have the team do that one ahead of time.
We have a question about your background and how did you come into this role?
Okay, I have a a bachelor's degree in ornamental horticulture and a minor in business. And I've been around Longwood since I was 10. My mother worked here for 30 years. So I did not plan on working at Longwood. I went in the Peace Corps after I was done in college. And then I came back and I was going to go to grad school. And my mother said, there's an opening at Longwood, you should apply. So I applied, and 24 years later, I'm still here. So I started off as a gardener, and then I worked my way up until I was responsible for the main conservatory. Then I left and ran my own business for 4 years, and they asked me to come back and do all the designing. So I've been back doing the designing since then.
We had a question about the outdoor lights again. Do they stay up all year round?
No, actually, people think we leave them up. We do take most of them off. So occasionally there may be a tree that we can leave them on, a few of the branches, but generally I would say 90% of them all come off and get put back on again.
Sue shared her favorite was the cranberries, the gilded walnuts, and the crab apples in the conservatory a number of years ago. So I think that was on the firm floor. Floating.
Yeah, that was floating. And we also discovered that hers potato chips would take all that fruit and feed it to their livestock. So that was a nice way to use them up after the display was over. So that was a good one. I like that one. I like floating things on the floor. I think it's just kind of fun and unexpected.
We have a question about the best time of day to arrive and where to start, inside, outside. So I'll go first, and then you provide your take, because of course it's very personal. I think to be able to see the true detail of the Christmas trees in the conservatory, it's breathtaking during the day. So I'd like to come about 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, grab a, after I get done with the conservatory, grab some hot chocolate, and then by 4:30, 4:45, it's already getting dark at that point. So the entire garden is lit up, and I think it's a so come in early to really see that true detail during the daylight. What's your favorite?
Yeah, I would agree, Melissa. That's exactly what I do with tours. I tell them come late afternoon. We'll do the conservatories during the day. You can appreciate everything under glass, and then grab some dinner, grab a cocktail, and then head out and see the lights outside. Because the lights outside, they're just magical at night. And there's so much to see outside. There's the whole experience in the main fountain garden, and there's the whole experience at the east end of the gardens, all the way down to the meadow. So there's plenty to see outside. And also the conservatories get a bit crowded. So it's nice to be able to go outside and walk around, and there's lots of space for everybody.
We have a question about, do you cut any trees or any of the branches off the trees with the idea of creating space for hanging ornaments? Or do you really work with the structure that was nature made?
Well, that's a good question. Because we're so particular about the trees we pick, generally we don't have to cut branches off unless they're too low, just to get them in our tree stands. And if we have to, we like to add branches. So the way we do that is we actually drill into the trunk and we stick a branch in there, and then we wire it to the other branches nearby. And we also make note of where that branch is, so that we can replace it halfway through if we have to. Now, this year, the trees all traveled really well, and we didn't have to add extra branches to them. But usually we're adding, not subtracting, if we have to do anything at all. But this year, the tree quality was so good, and they traveled so well that we did not have to worry about that.
Another 2 questions. They would like to know, do you decorate your own house? And if so, do you make house calls?
But I don't make house calls, and yeah, my house is done. So I did it over the weekend. So 3 decorated trees, and the house is decorated from one end to the other. So there's not a room that doesn't have some touch of Christmas in it.
Another question about mishaps of plans that didn't work out for whatever reason, or I'm sure many things you don't know until you start doing it and have the experience, but any word of advice of how to continue on?
Sure. Well, what I tell new staff members, I'm like, do not get upset. Do not worry. We are not on the transplant team. Horticulture will kill no one today. So I will put out all the fires. So generally we have enough pieces of the puzzle that if something's not quite fitting, we can pivot and come up with something else. So truth be told, during the entire Christmas experience, I don't get to hang a single ornament. My main job as head elf is to go around and put out the fires and make sure that everything else is happening and that it looks like one hand designed it all, which is impossible. But that's my role, is to make sure that everybody has what they need and that it's cohesive, goes together, and that everybody's happy and proud of what they're doing. Also, too, if we have a problem, we fix it. So you don't see it.
Kathleen had a question about, as we hang large ornaments and light fixtures outside, and how do we attach, especially with the winds that we could have during the winter?
Well, you just have to make sure, very, very sure, that your attachment points are good and solid. So when something's hung up here at Longwood, we actually do a redundant system where we have a chain and we have a safety cable. So we also expect the worst, we prepare for the worst. As far as hanging things, you want everything, you want the stuff you're hanging to weigh less than the cable is rated for. So we sort of have that system in place that everything that gets hung over your head is incredibly safe and secure. So you can't overemphasize that. I mean, you don't want your decorations coming down. You certainly don't want them coming down and hurting somebody or flying off and hitting somebody's car or anything like that. So when in doubt, always add extra attachments and make sure that they're well attached to things.
Piece of advice. Ronald mentioned about hot chocolate with Bailey's. That is a true fixture here at Longwood Gardens. It's been here for many, many years, and it's so popular. I doubt it will go anywhere unless Bailey's stop making Bailey's Irish cream. We had a question about a nativity scene. Do we ever feature a nativity scene here at the Gardens?
No, we don't. So we've made that decision that while we try to be inclusive to everybody, we are inviting to everybody inclusive. We don't want to put anything out there that's overtly religious because some people might not agree with it. So we try to be very neutral on that. We do call it Along with Christmas. We have made that decision to call it Along with Christmas, but we don't acknowledge any religion one way or the other during the holiday season. And that's true throughout the entire year.
Wonderful. We had a question about the Longwood movie that we would play during the holiday season. And I'm almost positive this individual is referring to our Longwood changeover video, which actually can be found on YouTube. We've had it for a number of years, but if you're longing to see that video, just pop over to YouTube and check out Longwood's channel, and you will definitely be able to find that. Well, we are going to wrap up with one last question. This question would be, one moment. Do you give tours to the holiday display?
I do give a few tours, yeah. Usually they're to out-of-town guests or special invited guests like that. And then, of course, I bring my family through on Thanksgiving night. So that's, I guess, my most important tour happens Thanksgiving night when my mother has to come see the display right after we're done with pie. So I do give a few tours, but I don't. We have wonderful tour guides that are fully versed in everything, and they can certainly give tours as well.
This time of year, we don't have any paid tours just because of the number of guests that are coming throughout the season. But we are hopefully hoping that all of this information that we are sharing with our members, they could be the tour guide for their loved ones and friends when they visit, because now they know all of these inside bits of how the Christmas display actually came to be. So with that, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your love of Longwood and, of course, Longwood Christmas. And to our members, thank you. Thank you for your support. because it preserves our rich legacy, but it also helps Longwood Gardens continues to share this incredible tradition with many, many generations. So we look forward to seeing you in the gardens very soon. If you had not made member reservations, make them now and plan a visit to come and see us. Thank you so much. Happy holidays all.
Thank you.